I believe that art is the only form of activity in which man, as man, shows himself to be a true individual and is capable of going beyond the animal state, because art is an outlet towards regions which are not ruled by time and space. To live is to believe.
Hey, Jordan here. Welcome to Table to Stage. That was Marcel Duchamp in a 1956 interview with James Johnson Sweeney at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Duchamp was a French artist known largely for Dadaism and Cubism, and he was an early pioneer in conceptual art, which is how he came up while I was speaking with today's guest, David Borawski, a Hartford-based conceptual artist. David's work is quite often a direct challenge to the viewer. He uses aggressive and often violent images or sharp and contrasting elements and many other methods to bring his pieces to life. It was really great to be able to speak with him about his work. Now, if you're enjoying the conversations on Table to Stage, I hope that you'll take a few moments to rate and review the pod on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Every new review helps other listeners find the show, and it helps to spread the word about the great work being done by creative people throughout the area. Okay, so let's get to today's creator, David Borawski. Are you originally from Connecticut, or did you come from somewhere else?
Yes. No, born actually in Hartford, raised in a suburb from near here, Newington.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I've been around the whole time.
Yeah. What kind of stuff were you into when you were a kid? Were you drawn to the arts?
Only child, so played alone a lot. My mother actually liked art, making, drawing and stuff. I mean, she never got the opportunity to pursue it because Portuguese family. Daughter, so yeah, she couldn't. No one, no support from the father, my grandfather. Even though I love the guy, but yeah, he was tough, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear. That generation was really.
Yeah, it's like you can't be an artist, but then that
that's not a job.
Right. Yeah, but then I heard that from my father, who was Polish actually. So my parents are Polish and Portuguese. That's my background.
Okay.
But yeah, he wanted me to be an accountant because I was pretty good at account. I got A's and whatever in accounting because it was easy.
Right.
It's just,
and that sounds like a career.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, it's math, but it's not really that bad. That's not hard math. I didn't have to get into taxes or anything. I don't know any of that stuff. So so he wanted, but my mother said, supported me in going to art school, so I did. But like in high school and regular school, I mean, I used to draw. I made my own comic books, kind of things at times.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
comic books, huh?
Yeah, that's what I used. That's what I really liked.
Yeah,
and then I go to art school at U of H. And like when you're freshman, you get what's called foundations. Mm-hmm. You get, it's like 9 hours a week. You're just like
a little bit of everything thrown at you, probably, right?
And, we have to buy all our books, and I'm like, looking at these books. I'm like, holy shit, I missed all this stuff. High school, they tell you right away, if you think you're going to be an artist, go to arts, take art every year in high school.
Yeah.
So I did, 4 years of art in high school. Yeah. Okay. So I made a silk screen. And I drew some whatever. I mean, I missed the only artists they ever talk about are Picasso and Dali.
Right.
And it's like there's all these great, amazing artists. I'm like, how did I miss all this stuff? And I'm more drawn and to some of my work still reflects. I was more drawn to minimal art and conceptual art.
Okay. But your mother was encouraging you as you were growing up to pursue the arts?
Well, to some degree. I mean, she was supportive. Yeah.
What kind of stuff were you really drawn to early on, like in high school when you're taking those classes? What was it that kind of sparked the idea that, I should pursue this at a collegiate level from here?
I at that point, I liked making things. You know what I mean? It's, but that now I don't care if I make it or not. There's actually a favorite artist of mine, Lawrence Weiner, was a conceptual artist.
Okay.
From this, he's still alive, but kind of got his chops in the late '60s, '70s. And it was a lot of text-based work. And one thing he said in 1968, it's a quote that I loved and I still live by. It's the artist can make it, someone else can make it, or it need not be made. So I always like that, because the thing is, I can make things, right?
Yeah.
But if you can make it better than me, I'll have you make it,
Right.
if I can afford it, because I want it a certain way, and I don't want to, like, if I'm not going to make it to the quality I want, then it's kind of,
Right.
frustrating.
Now, when you say conceptual art, what kind of stuff are you talking about?
Like Solowit. You're talking, earlier you met, or before we started, about process. Solowit's all about process, and he's from Connecticut originally too, world-renowned artist. And it's about, he would write instructions, and then someone else would carry out the drawing based on his instructions.
Oh, okay.
And so it's conceptual art, basically.
It's almost like technical writing.
Yes. Now, what I do, I wouldn't say I'm a conceptual artist, but it's conceptually based. I mean, it's something that is meaningful, which means a lot of the work you look at, it's more about the idea than the actual physical piece.
Okay.
But like in the 60s, 70s, conceptual art, a lot of it ended up being just documentation of this. Like, they had an idea and they would do something and it would be documented. I still think that art should be something that should be, is engaging to look at.
Sure.
So I want to make something that's engaging, but then there's a lot more in it. You know what I mean? There's more to it based on the title I give it, or the little clues that are, I don't want to be too blatant either. It's more
Right.
clues. It's like if you pick up on it, but there's layers. I think of it as layers. So you see something, okay, that looks pretty cool or not, but then it's like, oh, I wonder what that means. And then you keep digging. But
Right.
if all it is, oh, that looks good, and you want to move on, it's all right. It looked good.
Yeah.
But the more you dig, the more you find,
Well, do you know what it was about the idea of conceptual art that was attractive to you? Like, did you look at, other styles, other methods of doing this stuff and find it dull? Or, what was it about the idea of the
original
hidden messages and all that
Well,
stuff?
the original work that drew me in was more minimalist art, which is
Yeah.
like Carl Andre or Donald Judd, Richard Serra. They're using steel, they're using copper. Donald Judd's using plexiglass.
Okay.
But they're forms, they're shapes, and they are what they are, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, that appealed to me. It's like, I never really was drawn to painting, so I didn't
Yeah.
have any ideas for painting, and I really, now if I paint something, I spray paint it black. So,
Okay.
right. But, so I wasn't into that. And it's just something about the use of geometric shapes, if you want to,
Right.
in space, and how it altered the space. That's what did it for me. But see, minimal art basically is the piece you're looking at. It is what it is. That was their big thing. It's
Right.
not more than that. Well, I want things to be more than that. Well, conceptual art was all about the idea and less about the work, or less about the presentation.
Okay.
So I thought after a while it was like, well, combining them both. And I'm not the only one. That's what's usually called like post-minimal or post-conceptual art.
Okay.
It is that combination. It's like there is stuff to look at, but it's also, it's about the ideas that
Yeah.
are behind it. And I just like, the ideas better.
No, when you said that when you were in school and you're growing up that you were into comic books.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what that, like how you transition from comic book art, like that style of art, which is anything but minimal.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
It's
No, it was
oftentimes overstimulating. There's so much going on
Yeah,
on the page.
yeah.
Do you know, like, was there a conscious
It
shift
was-
away from that?
It was that shock and awe when I got to art school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look at all this amazing stuff. I thought, drawing and painting was art. Now I'm like, oh, anything is art. This is amazing.
Wow.
And reading about, Marcel Duchamp, with the famous urinal in the show, even though that was in the 20s. Never heard about him in high school.
Yeah.
And basically he started, and there were artists that's like, anything could be art.
Yeah.
And like he said, it's art because I said it is.
So
And that's conceptual.
Yeah. When you got to college then and you start learning about all this stuff that you never got a chance to hear about or see as a younger person, did that change the way you looked at everything that you had
Absolutely.
that you had seen before? Like did you see comic books completely different? Did you see did it change the way you looked at everything?
Kind of just never went back to that. Never even looked at that. it's like up, forward,
Just
move
a
on.
complete
That's
shift
it.
in the way you saw
Oh,
everything,
yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, drawing is still a part of now what I do, but it's not like freehand. I'm usually using images that I find online, and I what I call mechanically aided drawing, because I use like a light board, and some of it is traced, some of it's not. Yeah.
No, I mean, do you find that you use any of the skills or the information that you got in high school?
No, not at all.
Nothing.
No.
Okay.
Total waste of time. Absolutely.
Stay in school, kids. So while you're studying this stuff in college, then what skills did you learn in that process that you're still learning, that you're still using today?
It's how to look at stuff, and
is it really just that?
Think about
look
it,
at
thinking
things?
about it. Yeah. I mean, I took many different courses,
Yeah.
but I did take photography, I did the dark room, I did printmaking. Didn't really appeal to me, that kind of thing, but I did it. I tried it all. But then I started doing more sculptural things, and because especially the time period I was there, which was the mid to late 70s, it's like it was very experimental too, even more so than it is now.
Right.
I mean, like when I went there, so you had your art courses and you had to take academics. Mm-hmm. But it was like, I'd look at the academic, I'm like, I have to take chemistry or philosophy. They were like a choice. Well, why would I take, I'm going to take philosophy,
Sure.
or mathematics and sociology. I'll take sociology. So I was able to take what I want, and I don't think they get that kind of choices now.
Right.
Plus, I was very, very protective. The art school was, I think they still are to some degree, but I had like this assistant dean that, I'd take an academic, and I stopped going because I didn't like it. So
I've heard that from more than one person.
So I'd get the thing in the mail. I failed, or it was incomplete.
Right.
So I'd go to him and I said, Steve, I got this incomplete. And I said, I dropped that course. And he'd go, did you tell anybody? I'm like, no. He goes, I'll take care of it. And he would take care of it, though.
Wow.
He would get it fixed, take it off the thing, so it was very protective. But we also there was a couple people. One actually went on, he was doing artwork in New York. It was really good. His name was Gary Bachman, and he died a few years ago. I don't know, something happened, but he was one time, I still remember this, and this is 76, 77. I remember his piece. He drove around, he in the student gallery, it was like a performative piece. He would ride around the gallery in a 10-speed blindfolded.
Oh, okay.
So he'd make it for a while. He'd crash into the wall. It was great, and then you would enter the room. So you had to watch out for him because he couldn't see you. I don't know. It was such a great piece. Yeah.
No, that seems very conceptual to me.
Yeah, and now I don't know if they would allow that now. So they're thinking, and they also emphasize design now and computer graphics. So now I think they said, oh, geez, we should prepare these kids for life instead of just letting them be artists.
Yeah.
Which, so I'm fortunate I went when I did because I didn't have to worry about life.
Now, for a conceptual piece, like you just described, riding around on a bicycle with blindfold, or any other, high-level conceptual thing, how does that, what is the art? What is the message for something like that makes it art and not just a stunt?
Well, it is a stunt to some degree. But in his case, I think it was, he basically, the way he activated the gallery, where he used to, it's not, okay, this is an art gallery, we're going to see an art show. There's no paintings on the wall. You're watching this guy, drive around. He's taking, in a sense, what some paintings, the action of painting, and he's made it physical, and he's still using the space. So,
that's almost like interactive art then, I guess, right? Like you're sort of part of it because especially you're now an obstacle.
Yeah, especially if he hits you, yeah.
Wow.
But I think a lot of it, what it is you look at something and it's like, there's got to be more to this, and then the more you dig, there is more to that,
Yeah.
So.
Huh. Now, when you're experimenting with all these different art forms, you're at school, you have to take the general art class where they're throwing everything at you. Did you find that you were drawn to specific media over others?
Yes. Yeah.
What kind of stuff were you really
When I
interested in?
when I graduated, I felt I was a sculptor.
Okay.
I was making sculptures.
Like clay kind of things?
No,
or?
not at all. No carve. That's the joke. You get people go, oh, you're a sculptor. What do you carve? And I'm like, carve? I don't carve anything. Most of what I was using there, I used a lot of railroad ties. I used piles of stone. I didn't alter the materials a lot. You know what I mean? And that was interesting to me. It's like, and then now pretty much it's like, where's your art supply store? Home Depot, or online, but I want specific, and I like using, and even then, I mean, railroad ties had a special, specific, they were for railroad tracks.
Yeah.
But if you're making art out of them, so I've taken this
Well,
material,
they have a lot of history and story built into them by themselves, too.
They do, yeah. And that was something that, some of the minimal artists used, but I tried to push it, push it in another direction kind of thing.
So you were drawn to like industrial kind of stuff.
Yeah, still am.
Yeah. And what kind of things were you creating at that time? Like what were your sculptures conveying?
I mean, probably more at that time. It was more about the shapes.
Okay.
The way things were piled, laid up, whatever.
Yeah.
I called them then. I called them arrangements. I still kind of do to some degree.
Yeah.
Still, it's like sometimes I'm just taking objects and arranging them, and that's what becomes the piece.
Right.
An arrangement.
Now, when you're doing an arrangement of something like that, are you conscious of putting them into an arrangement that tells a story or conveys a message at any point? Or
Depends.
Okay.
Depends. Yeah.
Is it just a piece by piece thing?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say everything has been tighter the last 25 years, but but it took a while to get to that point.
Yeah.
But, so things are arranged in a certain way now.
Sure.
So the materials are meant to, like, I know what those are, and I know what that shape is, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. Have you been able to track an evolution of your work from the time that you finished college till what you're doing now?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'd say so. There was a point where, like, using stones and rocks and railroad ties, stuff like that, where, somebody said, wow, your stuff's really heavy, and I'm like, you're right, maybe I should try to find lighter stuff.
Yeah.
So I pretty much have,
Okay.
And sometimes now I'll show up with a roll of tape and I do a sculpture with a roll of tape.
Yeah. Now, what I find from talking to artists and different medium, painters, sculptor, whoever, there tends to be an awareness of a development of their individual voice, their own, the way their style is developed over the years. Have you consciously developed your voice or your style, or has it just sort of come along and you've just kind of let it go with the flow?
I think it has come along, but I think that I've consciously been pushing it in a particular direction.
Yeah. And what direction would you say you've been pushing it?
Well, the way I usually put it is there's lots of people who make pretty pictures, and there needs to be somebody that makes the stuff that's not so pretty. And that's where I've been drawn to.
Yeah.
So I make things that are, maybe uncomfortable at times, but I want them to look attractive. You look it in, and then when you're like, oh shit, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I mean? But then isn't that the world we have? They live in. Things draw you in, and then they're not what they seem. So that's kind of what I like to do.
Yeah.
And evolution as far as is just like color. I pretty much have reduced my color palette to black, white, red, and silver.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. So, since we're there now, there are so many colors in the world.
I know.
And your stuff is very high contrast, black, white, red.
And and silver. Those are my four pretty much.
So what is it about such a stark contrast in your work and that very limited palette that keeps you using it?
Well, again, it's I think because it focuses you on what you're looking at, and it's not, pretty. It's not like all these colors and it's,
right.
It's like a bouquet of colors. It's so it's like if somebody looks at it, it's just black and white. There must be a reason for that.
Sure.
And it does, and then it starts to hone you in, I think.
So when do you decide that you're going to have the red element, the highlighted pieces?
Yeah, it depends what it is. Like the piece over here, those are gas cans, or they call them jerry jugs that I got, and they happen to be red, red and black, but they're an amazing object.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I love them, and in this case, looks like a Molotov cocktail kind. You know what I mean? So it has a lot of different meanings, feelings to it.
So the Molotov cocktail kind of leads into another thing that I think thematically is present in a lot of the stuff that I've been able to see of yours, where there's a lot of aggressive and violent imagery or suggestion of violence in a lot of your pieces.
Yeah.
That can't be accidental.
No,
So
not at all. Not at all.
why is that really visceral element so important to you in your work?
Well, I mean, if people are going to an art gallery to look at art, they're going to probably, many of those people ignore that kind of stuff.
You think so?
Or are not, or they're not involved, or they're not in that peripheral.
Is that sort of, do you mean
So
like in a selective vision kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm showing them something that, or bringing something, making them look, or not making them look, but if they've come to look at it, they're now looking at stuff that maybe they try to ignore or just don't come in contact with because of their life.
So you mean ignore in life?
Yeah.
That that people are now being confronted with. Okay.
You know, I mean, so you see violence on your internet or on TV, and you're like, well, that's not my problem, right? Which for a lot of people, it's not. Right. But you should still be worried about it. You should still think about it. Maybe there's some way you can help. You know,
now there seems to be, the goalposts keep moving. We keep seeing where a certain level of violence exists. We get used to it, and now we have to cross that threshold before it even registers.
And we always do.
And it happens every time.
Oh yeah.
There's a shooting. There's another shooting. We're used to the shootings.
Right.
Now it has to be 5 or 6 people before it even registers and even makes the news. And that just keeps changing. That threshold keeps having to be pushed and crossed before anybody pays attention to it. But in your work, I mean, you're really making that, and it's, to me, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't know much about this stuff, but it seems to me in looking through your portfolio and seeing what you have on your website, that it's really important to be putting those things front and center and confronting the viewer. Is that because you feel it's not being confronted? I mean, you just said that people are ignoring it.
Yeah,
but
I think so,
is there a level that you're trying to cross to try to?
Well, I mean, it's also, like I mentioned before, though, is that I want to represent the ugly side of American life, of life in general. There's an ugly side, you know what I mean? And most people don't want to acknowledge that. I mean, sometimes I don't want to either, you know?
I think we'd all like to have to be able to just say that doesn't exist.
If I can do it, and I think in some ways I do, make that like visually compelling, then you're going to look at it. You know what I mean?
But beyond being visually compelling and, the idea that your work is conceptual, there's got to be a deeper meaning behind all of these things too, right? It's not just, you're not stopping at shock value, right? There's something else people are supposed to glean from it, right?
Right. And again, it's layers. You're going through layers, like those photographs, the 2 cars.
Okay.
I don't know if you recognize those cars.
I'm not a car guy, but one of them looks like a Charger.
Yeah. So the top car, the title of that is Out of the Blue and Into the Pink, which a lot of my titles come from song titles or lyrics of bands and stuff I like. That's a song by Husker Du, which is more of a punk band.
A punk band. Yeah.
Right. So that is the Baltimore Snipers car.
Oh, all right.
So you look at the car and you go, okay, it's a car. And but the title, Out of Blue Into the Pink, is because it goes from alive to dead, So but you're looking at it and it's like, I think that's kind of a cool picture. You know what I mean? The one beneath it I just did, that's the guy that ran over the people at Charlottesville and drove through the crowd.
Yeah. Okay.
So there again, you're like, oh, gee, that car smashed up. But then when you know what it is, you know what I mean? It makes a difference and it changes how you're looking at it. Oh, sure.
It goes from a picture of a car to a story.
Right.
And a really uncomfortable story.
Yeah. But a lot of times, pieces I've done, it's like, it's clues, again, like I say. And the title is a clue if you know it. But I mean, I'm always interested in the fact that, so you and I are looking at this, and not that I made it. We're looking at it. And it's like, holy shit, that's the car from Charlottesville. So now I can't unsee it.
Right.
You don't know what that is. And you're like, oh, it's a Dodge Charger smashed up. So you're both standing looking at the same piece. One person, now we're looking at totally different.
Right.
And it's like that, if you ever wake up in the middle of the night and you see this shadow and you think it's something.
Oh, yeah.
What the hell is it? And then you realize this, you can't see it again.
Right.
Right. So it's like once you know what some of this is, you can't unsee it either.
But I mean, there's got to be an element of people seeing this stuff. And like you said, 2 people go see and they can see completely different things.
Yeah.
there's got to be a conversation happening, like maybe on the way home or the next day about.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Are you're really trying to spark those conversations with people?
That would be great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would be great. Because you look at like, a Jeff Koons balloon dog. I mean, most people afterward are saying, I wonder how much that shit costs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think they're saying, oh, let's talk about balloon dogs. You know what I mean? It's not the
Right,
kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like the conversation won't really be significant. You
Right.
know?
But I mean, even with the cars, it's like, somebody see that and be like, well, what's with the picture of the car? I don't understand why there's a car on the wall with all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the other person hears what that car was. And now all of a sudden you have to go back and rethink about everything you saw in the first place.
Yeah. And that's the conceptual part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, are they thinking of it? Did they get it? They don't. I don't know. But I mean, I don't know if it, it's not my job. I mean, my job is throw it out there, I think. Put it out there. If they get it, they don't get it. That's I can't control that. I'm not going to follow somebody home and go, oh, remember that event?
But do you get feedback from people that come to your galleries and So what kind of stuff do you hear from people about?
Well, I did a show in Pittsburgh once. It was great. It was at a college, so I have to do a talk, to get the stipend. So
right.
And there's a lot of students there, and I'm talking about this floor piece I did, and and it was in the back of my mind at the time. This is several years ago. It was right after Katrina, and so the piece kind of referred to turmoil like that. And then they kind of broke up, and this one kid comes up to me and he goes, "I'm from New Orleans." He says, "That's what I thought when I saw it." And he says, "Holy shit!" And it's like I got one guy, and I said that was really cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we talked for a while about it, and also, if you get one person, sometimes it's
that's all it takes is one. Right?
It does.
Just looking for one person to connect with something.
If it's more than that, great.
There.
But one is good.
Yeah. Oh wow.
One is good. Yeah.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.
When you're putting these pieces together, there's the violence, there's the ugliness,
but there's some beauty in it too, though.
Sure. I mean, no matter, and I think that could be said about just about anything. Even you can find beauty in almost anything if you're looking hard enough. Some people are better at it than others.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not great at
Sometimes
it.
Sometimes you gotta really look hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta find a silver lining in a lot of places sometimes. But you're using very specific, and you mentioned before the geometric angles and stuff. But there's a lot of hard lines, a lot of sharp lines, a lot of contrasting elements. But then you also have flowy elements and stuff too. So
that's something I'm playing with.
Sure. And even when you're using something as hard and seemingly unforgiving as a chain, the flow, the draping of a chain.
To it, yeah.
So what is the idea behind those contrasts, the flow and the geometry?
Well, I mean, a lot of times with chains, they're hanging, so there's still it's still a straight line.
Right.
I mean, it is hard, but it's not. I mean, chains. I mean, a lot of stuff I think that I use material-wise has other regular meanings. I mean, chains are binding. They're for control, they're for safety. Same
just
thing
like
with
the railroad ties, there's history and story with just even using the element.
Right. But chains, I think, have a visual thing. People know chains. So if people are chained up or dogs are chained, chains block things off. Same thing with fences, and I like fencing a lot.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And the thing about a fence is funny or interesting to me is that it's a way, people use fence to protect themselves, keep people out, but it also keeps people in.
Sure.
So it's this one thing can do both. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, do you play with the angle of view on some of your pieces? Because if you have a fence on one, do you use it on one side? So if somebody's looking from one side of the fence, they see something different.
It depends on the piece.
Yeah.
It depends what it is.
Okay.
I mean, like that is the piece one that's part of a piece over there, but it's it's not one of those barriers you see, the police barriers, but it's pretty close, and it references that. So when I use that, you think, oh, that's one of those police barriers. So then that starts to bring in control again, and
Yeah. So is the idea
dominance, government dominance kind of thing.
Oh, okay. So is the idea of control or the illusion of control something that you play with regularly?
That one comes up a lot.
Yeah.
That comes up a lot.
Why do you find that so important?
Because it just seems like it's getting more and more, and we can't get away from it. The actual freedom that we're supposed to have keeps, getting more focused. And I mean, are we still free technically?
Yeah.
There's just too much change going on where that's fading away, really.
Yeah. So I mean, when you're using those images and that, trying to convey that message, how far are you looking to push people in the way that they view things? Are you trying to change minds or kind of just open up the way people see things?
It's probably more the latter, opening up. I mean, I don't know if art changes minds, especially when it comes to political ideas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
you don't think art can...
even in politics, people don't change their minds. So how is art going to do it? But
if
I open and somebody just like sees something they haven't seen and makes you think, then that's a good thing, I think.
But you don't think art can help change minds? No.
I don't know.
I like to think it can.
I used to.
It's disappointing to hear that.
No, that's okay. That's all right. Well, see, now here's one thing that I've done for quite a few years now. I deal with certain issues, but like people say, "Oh, why don't you do a piece about Trump or whatever?" I'm like, I didn't really like George Bush. I never did a piece about George Bush,
right.
But I did work then. But you know what? I can bring those pieces out and mix them in with other things now because I'm dealing with the issues, not the person. Because you know what? The people come and go. Issues stay the same. Yeah. Faces change. Bullshit stays the same.
Exactly.
So I don't like to
meet the new boss, same as the old boss kind of thing.
I mean, there's lots of art, protest art now about Trump and all, and I think that has its place, and some of them are really good. But I'm going to like talk about an issue that points to him, but you know what? It pointed to Bush, pointed to Clinton, it pointed to whoever. You know what I mean? It's been around forever.
So it's more just the challenge to power, no matter who the power is.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. When you're doing your galleries or you're putting your pieces together, are your pieces intended to be permanent, or are they more temporary? Like, do you assemble them for a gallery, and then when the gallery's done, they come down?
Some, yes, yeah, like the floor pieces that are the tape. When it's over, they get peeled up and thrown out. So they are temporal.
Yeah,
and the installation because usually, I mean, if I do multiple pieces that all work together, they're still like building blocks. I mean, they come apart, and that piece could go in with another one next time. And the way I've found over the years is that when I take a piece that was in one installation, now put it with other ones, it brings like the original concept and baggage with it. But now it's playing with new pieces, and then it's taking on other stuff. So that the pieces like change and they morph a little bit, but yet they still hold the original meaning.
Yeah, but I mean, the baggage that you say comes along with them, is that baggage that only you're conscious of when you're putting this stuff together as the creator?
Like my original concept. Right? I had this idea, but then I put it with something else. That idea is there, but now it took on something else because of whatever's with it now. So it's also taking on some of this. You know what I mean? And it's pushing it in a different direction.
When you bring those older pieces back to try to incorporate, does that change the way you use them? Like when you're reminded of the original concept or the baggage that comes along with
that's why I chose it to start with.
Yeah.
So I pick that one and I go and then I put something new with it because like a lot of times I've done a show and it comes out just the way I want it. And while I'm looking, I'm like, man, what if I had done it this way? What if maybe if it was this way instead of that way? And it's like, it is what I wanted. But then I'm like, okay, so next time I could change it. So I'll change it. And if it does come back, and some do, I like the idea of bringing old work and mixing it with newer stuff because the way I work, I mean, they're like elements that can be mixed and matched.
Yeah. Now, it seems like a lot of your stuff is also maybe dependent a little bit on the space in which it's being.
Yeah, the space determines what goes in.
Yeah. So how do you incorporate your vision, the message that you want, into, because you use lots of different spaces, right?
Yeah.
So
that actually is what's fun, is the challenge of a different space. I mean, one thing I tell my friends all the time is like, I don't have like, I'm not represented by a gallery that has this same white box every time.
Right.
And so I don't, I'd like to find out if I'd like it, but right now I don't have that. So generally when I get like a try for shows or get shows, I like when the spaces are different. So then it's the space itself is a challenge on how to treat it.
So do you generally have a space and then incorporate work into it, or do you generally have work and look for a space to put it?
A combination.
Okay.
Right. That's where, like, I say old work and new work. So, like, the new work will be a lot of times focused on that space. Now, it may be all new work, but if something fits in with whatever I'm thinking for that space, and a lot of it depends on what's going on at the time. You know what I mean? Things like events, world events and stuff, it affects how I think about the space, how the work is,
Sure. Now, there's a few pieces I wanted to ask you about specifically because when I was looking through them, like they, for some reason, called out to me like this. I want to know more about this, and I guess it's your newest piece, the first act of violence, which is just 4 words, right? But
money ruins everything.
They're so evocative. There's so much you could unpack from that. So what was the message that you're trying to convey with it?
Well, that's where the title pushes it. Like, I mean, really, the first act of violence is a quote. I read this as quote. It was when I think it was Altamont, which is something that I've always been fascinated with. The Altamont concert with the Rolling Stones and the Hell's Angels. The guy gets killed. Because the thing is, I did a specific piece one time. It was a photograph of the Stones on stage, and it was a picture that's you can find. I found it online, but the guy that did the stabbing is in the picture.
Oh, okay,
yeah. So the thing that's interesting, somebody looked at that and they go, "Oh, is that Altamont?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this was somebody when I was setting up the show." They go, "When was that?" They forgot, and I'm like, "It was 4 months after Woodstock."
Really?
Yeah. So Woodstock, peace and love. 4 months later, goes to shit. Huh? Yeah, everything's gone to shit at that. That was the end.
4 months.
Yeah. So, the Altamont. So I don't remember if it was because there's a documentary about it, which shows the Stones, and it was great. So it was either that or it was a written account. But when the Stones got there on helicopter, and this person's walking with Keith Richards, and while they're walking, like a herd of people tear down a fence and come running like for free. They rip down a fence, and Richards looked at him. He goes, "That's the first act of violence." Like he could always tell, something's not. This isn't going to be good,
right?
So
how do you tie that?
Well, I think when you look back to a lot of the things that are happening and have happened forever, it's money is violence, or money causes violence, and there's violence surrounding money.
Yeah.
People steal because of money. People do awful things because of money.
Oh, sure.
So money, to me, that's why I said money ruins everything, because it's a violent act sometimes, I mean, not to say I don't need it too. Everybody needs it. But I think, that's when I saw that, I read that quote, and I'm like, this is a good title. I think it's for that piece.
Yeah. Now, when you started tying those two things together,
the titles quote, always are harder to do than the piece.
The quote and the actual piece itself. Did you know that it was going to be in the format that it became? Like, was it always, because it's lettering on a floor, right?
Yes, gaffer's tape. But I do consider all of those tape pieces, those are sculptures.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Because they do activate the space there, and they're not necessarily three-dimensional, but in some way there are.
Yeah.
So I see those as sculptures.
Now, did you know that you were just going to have it that simple, that accessible, that just right there on the floor?
I knew that. Well, I've been doing that's something I've been fascinated with now for years, pieces on the floor. There was another one on my site where there was 2 big quotes that cross. I mean, so I've been doing the floor pieces for a while, and I like them. They still interest me, so I keep doing them. And what I like about them is, like I say, I consider them sculptures, but it's something where when you enter the space, not only are you in the sculpture, you're on the sculpture. You know what I mean? Whereas most artwork, you can't enter artwork that way.
Well, I imagine
you don't get in. You're not on a painting or in it. You're looking at it. Here, you're looking at it. But you're actually in it.
I imagine that a lot of people enter the space and just walk right across it.
Yeah.
Because they're not looking at the floor expecting the artwork to be there.
Well, there's two responses.
Okay.
Some people won't walk on it.
Uh-huh.
They just stand and walk around the edge.
That would be me.
Other people just walk right on it, and they are aware of it, but they walk on it and they're looking at it and everything. But one of the first times I did that, it was at this museum in Bridgeport, and so I was all done with the piece, and the curator says to me, "Oh, can we walk on this?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, I'm going to put up a sign." I go, "No signs. People have to figure it out for themselves."
Yeah.
Because I just find that adds another element to it. Because when somebody doesn't walk on it, it's like, I wonder what they think. Oh, it's art. I can't touch it.
Right.
So I like that, it's kind of a struggle, like for whoever. It's like, should I, shouldn't I?
Yeah. I mean, as somebody, I know for myself, I would not walk on it. But
in some of these spaces, you almost have to, or you couldn't enter the room.
Right.
I do it. It's in purpose.
And I think that, as somebody who wouldn't walk on it, part of the thinking for myself at that time would be, is the person who put this here wanting me to walk on it?
Yeah, exactly. You have to make a decision.
I don't think I can do that.
Yes. I've now made the viewer make a decision. So you have to make a decision.
So the idea for you is just forcing the decision to be made, regardless of what the decision is. Right. It's the process of actually making it that matters. And
then once you're in the room, you're part of the piece in a sense. Right. You're there. You're in it.
Huh. I'm just going to overthink that forever. Okay. I'm sure. Anytime I go into a space and there's something on the floor, I'm going to think about that.
Actually, and that goes back to Carl Andre. Minimal art is a lot of his floor pieces, which were done with square pieces of either iron or copper or zinc, that kind of thing, were meant to be walked on.
Oh, interesting.
But they never told anybody.
Yeah.
So, and so the first time I ever walked in and was standing in the middle of a Carl Andre, I said, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I want to do something like this.
Now, does that change your experience of the art?
Absolutely.
Being able to be immersed in it like that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, as somebody who appreciated that art before you had a chance to do that, what changed for you?
Well, I mean, the first time I did it? Yeah, because I always liked his work. I was drawn to his work early on. And it just changed everything. It really did. It's just, it's instead of just being an object to look at, I'm now, again, in it, on it. It's wonderful. It was wonderful.
The act of being immersed in it like that and being a part of it.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah. Now, another piece that I saw that I couldn't stop looking at was the three pieces together, the like father, like son, tell me to smile again, and over my dead body. So I'm not going to try to describe them.
Okay.
But I would like you to, tell us, what they are, how they came about, what the purpose of them was, and what the message is, because I want to see if my reaction to them was what you had in mind.
Yeah. So one of the things with them is they're on triple corrugated cardboard sheets. And I started doing a few things, and I still go back to it once in a while, where something on the cardboard I score through the first layer of paper and peel it, so you can see the fluting underneath, right? And I like that. So I've been doing a few things, and then I had these panels. But the pieces that the people or photographs that are in there are actually targets that you buy on a
like shooting range targets.
Shooting range site, yeah. One is a woman pointing a gun at you. One is an old man. One is a kid, and one is an African American guy with sunglasses. And I just, when I first saw those, I said, "This is amazing," because it was. And so I tried to buy them online, and they said I had to be law enforcement.
Really?
I had to prove I was law enforcement. And I'm like, so law enforcement and it's actually come out even more recently that's what they're like one city in the South, they actually were shooting at photographs of actual people in the town that
in the town they were in?
Yeah, that were thought of as criminals.
I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but that seems like a bad way to start a relationship.
Right, yeah. Let's have the cops shooting at your citizens, But even then this is, I bought these a long time ago. I only did the pieces recently. I had these posters and these targets, and I didn't really know what to do, but I said and then I went back to the website like a year later, and I didn't have to be the cop.
Oh, really?
So I bought them. I said, before they change their mind, I'm buying them. And it was just something that I thought was amazing, is that here's a target, and and they're practicing shooting at other people. You know what I mean? So I put them on, and then in different ones, I did the peeling in various parts of it, whether it's the barrel of the gun or the sunglasses, and that just tied it back into that particular project. But all of them, they're looking out at you pointing a gun.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a father and his son, right?
In my piece it is. They were, it was an older guy. Yeah. So they're in one piece. Yeah.
And then there's a woman by herself and the black man by himself.
Right.
And what sort of reaction were you anticipating, or do you even think about anticipating a reaction to them, either individually or if they're displayed all together as a collective?
Yeah, which I haven't done yet, but I would like to. I would like them all be in the same room at the same time. I've only had a couple separate ones at times.
Okay. So what kind of reaction are you looking for?
Well, I mean, I think initially it's like you see somebody pointing a gun at you, But then that's why the titles, I think try to push that in a direction, Because especially in gun culture, a lot of times younger people have guns because their parents did.
Right.
And it just gets passed down, that whole thing,
Right. I mean, I saw it as a father showing his son how to use a gun. Mm-hmm. I saw it as a woman who is just fed up.
Which is why the title, Tell Me to Smile Again.
Just had enough and is taking matters into her own hands. And I saw a black man who was probably defending himself. Now, all of that is probably because I'm so enculturated into where we are today as a society that those are the images I'm used to seeing or used to being made to think about.
Right.
And I imagine there are other ways of looking at these things. So,
there always is.
Yeah. Have you thought about the other ways people would perceive them? Does it matter to you the way people perceive them?
Not completely. Yeah. Not completely. I mean, a lot of times people ask me, what does this mean? I'm like, I can't give you one answer because sometimes even my own work, I look at a different time and I think of something else. I mean, there's lots of interpretations.
Sure.
And I like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I like that on any given particular viewing. The combination of elements could push it and make me think of something else, make someone else think of something.
Yeah. I guess the interpretation of the art by the viewer is always an important part.
And that's always the final piece to the puzzle. Yeah. When somebody looks at it, that's with anything really.
Yeah.
Even a balloon dog.
When you have a gallery showing, and people are viewing your work, do you ever ask like what they're seeing?
No.
Does it ever occur to you like to want to know?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody comes up to me and has an interesting question, right? Then I'll engage them.
Sure.
I had a piece. This is a long time ago, and I was still using various piles of things. I had a piece in the gallery that had a little pile of asphalt. And somebody came up to me, and people were like, "Oh, good, look at that. I like it." And this guy came up. He goes, "Oh, did you do that?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't know what it is, but that piece really bothers me." I'm like, "Really?" Oh, I couldn't get away from the guy. Tell me why. Tell me why. And he goes, "Something about it, just like it's really upsetting." I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be at the time. I don't remember what the piece was now. That was a long time ago. But, getting that kind of reaction, I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How did I even get that?
An emotional response to something.
And that may, then back to your other question, that may have pushed the direction I'm going in. That was an early turn in the road kind of thing for me. Yeah. It's like, I can get like these kind of reactions instead of just like nice, beautiful. No, I can get like upsetting. I can upset somebody. That's amazing.
Now, do you have pieces up around the state these days where people can see them?
Right now, actually, over by the Union Station, the train station, amazing guy, Eric Benkiki, in here in Hartford, who used to have a gallery called EBK Gallery. It was in a space that's now it's in the back of the Goodwin Hotel, and he knew it was short term because it was vacant at the time, and now they want to rent it, so he's out. So he's got a project called I think it's called Outside In, Inside Out, something like that. But he's going around and vacant storefronts. He's putting art in them.
There's so many vacant storefronts.
I know. So that whole stretch by the train station, he's got like 10 or 15 artists.
Oh, great.
I have one piece in there.
Okay.
A lot of great work. I mean, it's really nice. And now people come off the train and they see a whole like row of stores with art in the window. It's beautiful. It really is. Yeah. That's really cool.
Do you have any galleries coming up?
I'm working on some stuff. But,
Okay.
Yeah, but
Nothing to announce yet.
yeah, no. More like, I had mentioned, or you saw that I do some curating too.
Yeah.
And I got more of that. I'm busier with that right now with Real Art Ways over in Hartford. Amazing gallery, 47 years I think they've been around now.
Is it that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, back in the old days, they showed, John Cage was there and Mercy Cunningham.
Wow.
Yeah. Fido Aconci. Actually, one thing that the director, Will Wilkins, said to me not too long ago was after Kehinde Wilde got the portrait of Obama, he actually had his first gallery show at Real Art Ways out of college. So
Wow.
So Real Art Ways has a lot of amazing history. So I'm really privileged to be part of that history now, in a sense, by being able to put some shows to get shows.
What's that like working with other artists in the area to get their pieces shown?
Oh, it's great. Really. Yeah.
What kind of galleries are you putting together there?
It's more contemporary work. It is, so. And I go everywhere. They send me to New York a lot because that's actually the history of Real Art Ways was more starting from New York. I mean, I generally like to, when I curate a show, I try to have, I want New York artists, I want whatever international, but I also want somebody local too, because then it's not like, oh, he's from New York, he's so much better than Hartford. No, he's not. Right. They're next to each other. You don't know the difference. You know what I mean? It's just location. New York is pretty special, But in Hartford has, we have to move on, So, I mean, move on is like, I always tell my friends that live in Hartford is try to get shows elsewhere because you want to be a complete artist, not just a Hartford artist. You know what I mean?
Now, there seems to be a lot of interest in galleries these days that maybe it's always been there, but I've only become aware of it in the last couple of years, maybe. Have you noticed a trend in galleries coming and going in the state, or the way that different artists are being showcased?
The coming and going, a lot of that, like in big cities like New York, is just because a lot of galleries, if they're not like top tier, it's hard. Yeah. And they get priced out or rent, or they can't make it. Right. So the bigger galleries are always there. The little ones come and go. Yeah. But I mean, it's the smaller ones like Lower East Side and Brooklyn. That's where I like to go because, you're seeing people that they haven't made it yet. Well, maybe showing at Real Art Ways will help that, So I try to bring them up, Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, as far as galleries in the state, they're pretty much the same. Things haven't changed that much. Okay. There's Real Art Ways, there's Art Space in New Haven. Yeah. The great one that just a few years, I think, they've been around several years now, was 5 Points up in Torrington. Okay. Judy McAlone does a great job with that gallery. It's beautiful. Yeah. So.
All right. So what do you see as your next projects? Do you have anything planned?
I've got proposals out, places that I really want to show, and we'll see what happens. That's all I can do. Yeah. All right. Well, but I really have tried. I mean, I've done some things recently with friends. I've shown at places just because I really appreciate the person that asked me. But for the most part now, I'm focused. I want to show where I want to show. Yeah. And that's harder because I have to knock that door down.
Yeah, I'll bet. So where can people see your stuff online?
ROT8TOR.org, rotator.org.
All right. What about social media?
I do Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Facebook, just like friends of friends. But Instagram, it's Dave Borawski.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for talking to me. It's been fun.
All right.
Thanks.
Another big thank you to David Borawski for coming on the show and sharing his work. You can visit rotator.org. That's ROT, the number 8, OR.org to see his work for yourself and to keep up with his gallery showings. And you should definitely follow him on Instagram at DAVBORSKI. Don't forget, leave those ratings and reviews of the podcast on your podcast service of choice. And if you have any questions or comments for me directly, go ahead and send an email to tabletostage@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. That is it for now. Until next time, keep creating.